Hello, welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 15, Shamanic Relationships. I am Katherine Bird, and I am here with Michelle Hawk, and we are here to talk about shamanism, energy healing, consciousness, and everything in between, as we are practitioners, facilitators, mentors and healers on our path, supporting others and supporting each other and supporting you out there in the world on your journey. So we're really honored to bring our views and our life journeys into your world to hopefully support where you're at. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, Kat. How's it going?
Amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, life is very good.
Awesome. Yeah. It's so Shamanic Relationship. I think this is a good place to start speaking about Shamanic Relationship, where, you and I have been doing this consecutively 15 weeks now. We've known each other for a couple of years, and it is such a joy to share our personal and professional experiences with all of our viewers. So thank you for joining us. When we speak about shamanic relationship, we're talking not only about romantic partnership, but about other types of partnership as well, and even familial relationships, your friends, your business partners, your teachers, your coaches, your mentors. Your pets, absolutely. You can have shamanic relationship with the animals in your life. So please keep that in mind as we continue, and we will be diving into the romantic relationship aspect of shamanic relationship, and yet all of these components do apply to all of the relationships that we have in our lives. So let's keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. You and I have a very shamanic relationship, Kat.
We have an extremely shamanic relationship, one which often surprises us, I think,
mm-hmm.
in its depth of how it shows up in our lives in this very shamanic way. As we move through life, you and I have this really deep connection.
Mm-hmm.
Our lives kind of have these odd mirroring effects to each other.
Yeah. And we'll delve a little bit into what are some of the defining characteristics or components of shamanic relationship. And that would be one of them, living parallel lives, we call it, after we speak a little bit about like what in general constitutes a shamanic relationship. So, we have manifestations of these in all different paths or all different ways of our lives, but the deepest core aspect of what is a shamanic relationship, it's one in which there is a very deep and profound energetic connection. There's a soul contract there that's been in place for who knows how many eons.
Yes, and in that it feels as though it transcends space and time, and often is that maybe familiar feeling that happens, or that spark of coming together when you come together and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I found this person, or this is so intense that I found this person, or this is so familiar, it's so something for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just can't put our finger on it exactly what it is. But I remember when you and I first met, we met once, and talked briefly, and I was already, when we first met, I'm like, here, let me give you a gift.
Yeah, you gave me a Yamuna ball. We met, delving into just a tiny bit of backstory into our story. We met after Burning Man 2013 through some mutual friends. We were all staying together at Summer Lake Hot Springs, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember you were showing me how to do a little bit of body rolling on the ball. That was my first introduction to you as a person. And you gave me your business card. I kept that business card. I don't know if I ever told you this. I kept that business card on my desk for months because I was like, I need to talk to this person, but I was either the timing wasn't right. There was a lot going on. I was also kind of intimidated by you because you were this super cool, magical person who I met. And I didn't have many people like that in my life who could mirror that for me. So there was this element of, what if she's not that cool? I don't know.
Yes, and then we got together. I think you called me and we're like, let's go have tea. We went to have tea, and I don't know how long we were there, but I think it was a long time, because once we started talking and being like, oh my gosh, me too, me too, me too.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I worked with Bowie first, actually. Before that, I worked with Kat's dog, and then we had our connection where we discovered, oh my gosh, we have shamanic relationship. We have so much in common, and cannot wait to dive deeper. And that was in January 2014, I think.
And we immediately went into we created
2015.
a women's group together that was meeting every week over the next year. So we got to really dive into each other's lives and support each other's businesses and interactions with clients and personal lives and healing work, and really get to talk about what it's like for us to live the lives that we live, to be of service in the way that we are, to show up the way that we do, and support each other through that, which is so important, because as healers, as mystical beings, as people who are doing shamanic work, there aren't a lot of people that you can just drop into and like tell them what's really going on in your life and what your experiences are, and have that other person really understand you and hold space for you in a way that feels just so right on, and such good advice and such amazing nurturing. So, this relationship has been such an important part of my life since we met then.
Likewise, absolutely. And that's one of the aspects of shamanic relationship, is often you're at a very similar frequency. Sometimes is the case, sometimes not. We do absolutely have shamanic relationships with people in our lives who are at very different frequencies, and that's another layer of what we'll be talking about. But for example, Kat, you and I, our energies are very similar in many ways. And I think I was having this revelation a little bit yesterday when we were chatting about what are we going to talk about, where sometimes because our energies are so familiar, it's very familiar to me to speak with you and to work with you. I get caught up in the little nuances of what are the differences. And yet zooming out, looking at the big picture in terms of global frequencies, we're very, very similar. And there's enough difference that there's an aspect of complementing each other, which is really beautiful. So as our viewers are contemplating the shamanic relationships in your life, be in contemplation, be in consideration of who are the people who have very similar frequencies to me, and how might they be showing up in shamanic relationship? Who are the people who have very different frequencies from me, and how are they showing up to be in shamanic relationship with me? Because we can have people, profound teachers in our lives, who are at a very different plane, and yet they're still showing up in deep shamanic soul contract to be working with us.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important words that you're using, like a teacher. And it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, this is my teacher, I'm going to go and take the class with, or whatever. But there seems to be an aspect of a mentorship quality to these relationships. And sometimes that can be, I know you and I, we definitely mentor each other and show up for each other in that way as mentors for each other. And we've both attended each other's events and trainings and things like that, classes, and taken on aspects of each other's work. I've seen my work really evolve through my relationship with you, and really owning different aspects of my work in a different kind of way by being witness to your work. By just being in your field, it actually shifts my awareness and my field in the way that I work, and the way that I work with people, and the way that I work with myself.
Yeah. And I can say the same very confidently, where my practice, especially the physical aspects of my practice of moving energy through the physical body, has been exponentially catalyzed and alchemized by witnessing the way that you do that and attending your trainings and integrating that into my system, my practice.
Yeah.
And here we are also speaking about energy work aspects, particularly in the professional realm of how our lives have been impacted by each other. And for those of you who may or may not have a colleague, I guess, a professional counterpart that you're having this shamanic relationship with, this still applies in the personal field. So thinking about relationships where, okay, what is a skill, maybe a personal skill, a relationship skill, an interpersonal dynamic that is catalyzed in me simply by being around and witnessing this other person.
Exactly. These relationships are ones which inspire growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be growth on so many different levels, whether that's, through the work that you're doing in the world, your mission, through your personal development, or, in so many different kinds of ways that we're growing each other. And for it to feel mutual, for it to feel like there is this, kind of mutual breath within the experience. And this morning I was thinking of, as, kind of as we've been talking about this topic, about all of the relationships that I have in my life that are these shamanic relationships, which are so, they feed me so much. I'm so blown away finding such beautiful people that I get to spend time with, share energy with, share teachings, share, mystical learnings from the ages, and that I get to be a part of that is what an amazing blessing. And I know that a lot of my people that I work with, one of the things, especially as we're sort of beginning our journey and owning our gifts and getting out there, one of the things that happens as we become facilitators, teachers, and guides is that we start to become that at all times. And sometimes we're seen as sort of like put on a pedestal, or kind of seen in that teacher position, healer position, so that even friends, when they're interacting with us on like a friendship level, they're sort of interacting with us in this sort of way that's like teacher student all the time. And that can get really draining for people. It can get really frustrating,
because it feels like you're working all the time.
Yeah, and trying to bring boundaries into the relationship. And so one of the things that I'm in very high encouragement of is to speak out that I am looking for these kinds of relationships, so that I can have relationships where we're on this same level, or maybe somebody's, we're kind of like within the same little block of levels, so that I can feel really nurtured within my relationships as well. Because I've seen people kind of be taken out emotionally by not having these relationships in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we did an episode, I think it was one of our first episodes, about building your tribe, calling in your tribe, and building sacred community. So viewers, if you haven't seen that one, I would encourage you to jump back and have a little look there too, because this does overlap significantly with what we're talking about today in shamanic relationships. The shared mission and purpose aspect is, I think also, we've touched upon it a little bit, but for some, especially a relationship such as ours or other professionally oriented relationships, or even your personal romantic relationships, when you're in shared mission and purpose, where either you're working in the same field, or there's some personal drive, some personal force that is catalyzing you forward, that you can, even the alchemy there is even greater, because it's as you drive yourself forward, you drive the other person forward, and vice versa. And so looking at especially work such as ours, or partners who are working together. Kat and I have some mutual friends who work together. They're a married couple, twin flame bonded partners who do amazing work together. Their healing work is outstanding. And they're definitely in shamanic relationships, supporting and catalyzing each other to move forward in personal and professional realms. So finding that aspect of, okay, you and I are on same mission, that's wonderful, and our frequencies are really in alignment. It's very nurturing and supportive in many ways.
Yeah, and I think, when we, when we're on this path, it's not always the easiest path. And so having that like push, okay, here we go, it really gives us, the support that it really takes to live this life in real devotion and service as we're so committed to.
Yeah. Another aspect of, or another component, I would say, of identifying the shamanic relationships in your life are that you work with similar guides or work with the same guides. And I remember thinking about this quite a while ago in the context of animal guides, where Kat, both you and I work very strongly with hawk medicine. And I have another medicine sister who also works very strongly with hawk, and a medicine brother who also works very strongly with hawk. And all of these people in my life, I was noticing my medicine family seems to be hawk tribe is a significant component of people who are showing up very strongly in my life, particularly around that time, through hawk tribe. And this is the case with other spirit guides as well. Or, if you work with archangels together and you're noticing, oh yeah, and I have a group of friends also who I'm not as close with, not as deeply tied with, but they all work with bear medicine. And bear isn't one of my predominant guides, and there's a little bit less connection there, but I see how tight they all are, and they're all working with bear together. So that's one of the ways in which we come into relationship with our tribe, our community, in forming shamanic relationships under similar guidance and energies of those archetypes.
Absolutely. I get a lot of owl people too.
Yeah.
And when we start thinking about if you are in the past more, maybe you would maybe live a life of devotion and service to one god, goddess, deity, being, and you work in that temple and really be in service to that one being, and everyone there would be of that same frequency, and you'd be vibrating at that same frequency. Vibrating at that same frequency, and pulling in that same energy. So when you surround yourself with people who have those same guides, tuned into those same beings, then you're pulling in more power into the container, and more of the wisdom can flow through you. So I think it's fascinating, and as you meet people that you feel really connected to, like finding out what their spirit animal is and finding out who they're connected to is a really fun thing, because sometimes you'll be like, oh yeah, I yes.
Yeah, I remember when I first had that revelation a while ago, it was totally unrelated to what we're talking about now. And I laughed so hard just noticing all the people in my life who were so tuned into the same energies, and like how you could make the friend groups, or, make the medicine family groups based on who you're working with. And so going back to the frequency, Kat, you were bringing up an important aspect of, you're pulling in the energy of that guide or that group of guides. And not to say that everyone's going to be working with exactly the same. Like I know you work with more of the extraterrestrial energy than I think I do. And yet there's part of that is how I think we're creating similar frequencies, or we're tuned into similar frequencies with each other. And we've talked a little bit about what does that mean? What are some of the implications of having really similar frequencies? But we can also have shamanic relationship with people who have very different energies from us. So I know in my life, one example of that is my father. And I had a wonderful teaching moment earlier today, actually, and somehow managed to get in a fight, like not a very big fight, but a small fight with my father over something very minor. And I was considering, in light of, okay, we're going to be delving into shamanic relationship today. My father has been a wonderful teacher for me in terms of, he is a contrast. He's a very sharp contrast with the way that I live my life and run my energy. And he is in many ways polar opposite from me. And yet he and I still have a very deeply shamanic relationship.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about my mother.
Yeah.
There are some of our aspects are similar, but deep shamanic relationship with her.
Yeah.
Which is, one of the aspects of having a shamanic relationship is that it really calls us to do our work. It calls us into our shadow work, into really looking at the aspects of ourself that maybe aren't so light-filled or in alignment, that we really need to look at. And that's an important part of these relationships. And sometimes these relationships are really not easy. They're not like, oh, this is all love and light and we get to just support each other. Sometimes they're much more confronting in a way that just does not feel good. And sometimes we have those relationships that we can't really, we feel like we can't extract ourselves from. And especially with our parents or our siblings, loved ones in our family, where it's like, I can't pull myself away from this. It's really going to force me to do this inner work.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the alternative, and in my case, I have not ever reached the point where I've been wanting to actively remove my father from my life. But, I'm recognizing that is a choice. And some people do choose that. We are sovereign beings. We get to choose who we have in our field and who we don't. And my father, as challenging as he is still a wonderful teacher, and in many ways, a very compassionate, nurturing person who is struggling with his own demons in such a way that it makes it very hard for us to have a good relationship. So in his teachings and in the opportunities that he is helping create with me, it's been ever more for me. I'm taking it as an opportunity to step even more deeply, ever more deeply, every moment into my practice, my personal practice, my boundaries. Also, it's been a wonderful practice in boundaries and my triggers, my emotional responses. So in that way, I'm very grateful. He's been a wonderful ally for helping me delve into my own darkness in that way.
Yeah. And that these relationships are that, right? They allow us to explore both our light and our shadow, and to, really go deep within ourselves, within the context of the relationship, in some kind of way that is spurring on our growth and evolution.
Yeah. And this shadow work can take place even in the most loving, nurturing, caring relationships. Shadow work is not limited to our challenging relationships. And, here we brought up a couple of our big ones. My father, your mother are, I would say, some of our primary shadow shamanic relationships. And yet, even like you and I, for example, we've had some of our shadow aspects triggered with each other. Again, you're my sister, I love you dearly. And still there is space for shadow investigation that we've prompted in each other. And in some really wonderful ways to investigate old patterning, I think, on both of our parts, and simultaneously holding each other in so much love that we can do that in complete grace.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'll just share one of the shadow pieces that, Michelle, you're such an amazing practitioner, and your work, like your mediumship skills, are so ridiculously profound. And, when I see you go into your work, like, it seems so easy to you. Like, it just is so So easy, so in some ways it feels so light and just being. And for me, over the years, it's like pulling things apart, and it seems much more intense in a lot of ways. And I've witnessed myself judge myself against you in terms of sight and uh, things that don't maybe come as easily to me in these realms, and to have those internal judgments, and to have to look at that, and to look at where I judge myself as being less than, where I judge my work, and then coming back to self-love and loving myself, and really accepting that the gifts and the skills that I have are the gifts and the skills that I have, and they're ever evolving and ever growing and ever changing. And to just be in full gratitude, acceptance, and love of what it is that I do, which is similar to what you do, but also different.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. That's it means a lot to hear such a wonderful reflection from you, whose opinion and professional expertise I trust very highly. For my part, Kat moving to Southern California it was November that you left Portland, November of 2015, right? That prompted some very deep shadow work on my part that was paralleled actually in the world of my personal relationships. In that month, like within a couple of weeks of each other, I broke up with my partner, my long-term partner, and Kat announced that she was moving, and she left. And I was actually, I think, more devastated by you leaving than I was by my breakup, because in a very short amount of time, and also very shortly, within a week or so after that, I found out that I lost my house. So it was a very intense time for me, where I felt as though all of my support systems had suddenly abandoned me. So I was forced to confront my shadow around abandonment and safety and stability, and my own internalizing my sense of safety, to trust that I am okay, I can take care of myself. And yes, I do have my tribe to support me. Obviously you're a phone call away, and that's great. And yet it really forced me to bring my network internally. And that was a really wonderful tool that has served me since, instead of looking outside for safety and validation and comfort, I now look inside for those things. All prompted by shadow work with you.
Wow, yay, that's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we do see within our relationship, and then in other relationships that we have, is that how much that we feel each other, and the energetic connection, which can be so positive and so amazing, and it can also create some intense or weird experiences in our lives. And when you're having this energetic pull that's really strong, and sometimes it starts to create these sort of mirroring experiences with each other. I know we've had this where we're like, I had a breakup, and you're like, oh God, I'm like, I don't know what it was, like 3 days later or something.
It was within a week. It was a month ago. We both went through breakups within a week of each other. And it was funny, as soon as you told me that you two broke up, I had that thought flit through my mind of, oh gosh, am I next? And yes, within days. So, because, again, it's, and we both have still very significant shamanic relationships with those partners. And yet also, you and I are so strongly connected. It's like there's, okay, yes, we're connected with the partners, and you and I are also in partnership. We're in shamanic partnership. And so viewers, keep in mind, as we're, offering you some of these bits of information here, everything that we're saying, please have a look at the relationships in your life. Again, your professional relationships, your family relationships, your friendships, your partnerships, and be looking for what are ways in which your frequencies are similar, or are they different? How do you prompt each other to do your shadow work? How do you feel each other's energy? Do you have that innate sense of being able to tune into each other? Do your lives mirror each other in certain ways? Are you catalyzing each other in growth? Everything that we're talking about, please do kind of sit with and apply. So, Kat, actually, yeah, we had a funny example of being really tuned into each other's frequencies come up this past week. And so would you like to introduce why that came up?
I have been, it's starting the last week or so, last 2 weeks, participating in a galactic ambassadorship training, which is working with extraterrestrial energies and guides and beings. And as part of the training, we have all made this container of commitment that at 11:11 at night, we are all doing, we're doing meditations in the morning and then meditations at night and activation meditations. And Michelle calls me and is like, I'm not sure what's going on, but every night I am getting hit with these really intense energies from, about 10:30 till 11:30. And what's going on?
Yeah, not knowing that it had really anything to do with you. I mean, you had an intense weekend of ceremony and I was feeling that, but it was going on for the whole week. Every single night as I was winding down and reading or whatever, I would start sweating and moving and feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to cry. I have to release the energy. I'm so inspired. I have to write. I have to channel all the things. What the fuck? And all of a sudden, for an hour or so, and then right around 11:30, it would stop, and I would get really tired and fall asleep. And this happened, I think, every night. And then, we finally figure out when I'm sharing this with you yesterday, 2 days ago or so, and you told me that, oh yeah, I've been doing this galactic activation meditation every night at that time. And so no wonder that I've been having that intense experience of moving this energy through my body, because you and I are on such a similar frequency and we're so deeply connected.
Yes. And, so this can be like, it can be super positive, and it can also be something that maybe affects your life. I mean, Michelle's amazing and is totally, up for having the experience, I'm sure, but in some ways it's like, I'm trying to sleep here. What are you doing?
Yeah, last night I was on the phone until after, like, around 11:45 or so, or midnight. But it's funny, I was on the phone and right at 11:30, I didn't know what time it was. I said, oh yeah, I'm getting really tired. I'm about ready to hang up, and I look at the clock and it's 11:30. So right on schedule. But tonight I do think I will be setting up some boundaries so I don't get tapped into that activation. I need to go to sleep early because I've got a big day.
So let's talk about that. One of the things that happens in these shamanic relationships is that sometimes our boundaries aren't very good. We're not putting up good energetic boundaries or for ourselves. Sometimes these relationships can become very addictive. We're feeling all of this energy and we can become really wrapped up in this other person. And we can see this sometimes in these sort of like guru relationships where we have like a mentor who becomes so important because we've tuned our energy, our frequency so much into that person that now we're maybe doing things that we aren't in alignment with our integrity or with our soul path, where we maybe are making decisions that aren't based on really our what our heart is telling us, because we become so entwined with another person's energy and their mission and their frequency that we can become where we're having these codependent, addictive relationships with people where we're even merging with them in some ways and taking on their stuff, right? Taking on their traumas, wounds, their karma, and trying to move it through our system and our body, which sometimes can make us ill or cause confusion and other issues in our life.
Yeah, I would say that's a really huge component of some of the unhealthy manifestations of shamanic relationship. We've been focusing a lot on the healthy, positive ways in which we can be in shamanic relationship with each other, but the addictive energy aspect is a big one. Also, you talked about processing old karma, taking on each other's karma. These unhealthy shamanic relationships can manifest in our lives as opportunities to help us break away from old patterns. And usually when you find yourself in unhealthy shamanic relationship with somebody, you're living out a pattern that you've lived out before, I would say is fairly safe to say, or maybe not usually, but sometimes. And you have the opportunity then to either recognize it and say, I release this karma, I release this old energetic patterning, and break the cycle and move beyond it in a healthy alchemical way, or get sucked into the patterning, get sucked into whatever it is, old karma, and then you end up repeating it with that person. I have an example of an abusive relationship that I was in several years ago, where this was a very deeply shamanic relationship with a man whose frequency was very different from mine. We've been talking about the similar frequencies, the different frequencies. He was also a wonderful teacher for me in that I stepped away pretty much completely. I stepped away from my gifts while I was with him. And I was still doing some work, but I noticed, oh, it's weird. I'm never psychic when I hang out with my boyfriend here. And that was, I think, one of the primary learnings for me in that moment, is that I never want to step away from my gifts again. So that was one of the ways in which he was a very deep shadow teacher for me, by forcing me, or not forcing me, but by creating a circumstance with me where I could step away and feel separate and feel anxiety and grief and not know why it felt as though my world was falling apart and turning upside down, so that then I could claim my power and come back into right relationship with myself, my work, and my core and my spirit guides, and decide, oh, okay, thank you, teacher, wonderful dark teacher, for being in shamanic relationship with me. Now I don't need you in my life anymore, and step away from that abusive relationship.
Right. That's such a beautiful example and story, Michelle. And I'm so happy you shared that. Mm-hmm. It's, a lot of times we don't, especially when we're like, oh, I'm a powerful healer, and we don't want to admit that we have these relationships that really bring forth our deepest shadow wounds from this lifetime, and then from lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes. And sometimes they're so confusing because maybe they don't have an association with what we've experienced in this life. Like, how could I be in this abusive relationship? How could I be in this reality? And it's, we get the opportunity to work through some really deep past life issues with these people. And sometimes the breaking of the relationship is the healing that is needed, and is the most important part. We hope that our relationships are safe containers for our growth. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes the safe container that we're creating is actually within us to do this work. And the relationship is the trigger point for the work that we're doing.
Well said. I think that's a great way to put that. And noticing also when recurring patterns appear in our shamanic relationships. I think, looking at sort of an overall lifetime trajectory where, so with this abusive relationship, I worked over the years, it's been several years now, and I've done a lot of work processing the wounding, processing the trauma, processing all these different facets of harm. And now, I feel totally comfortable talking about it. I own it. I own all aspects of it. And yet there was one aspect that it was relatively minor, but I hadn't really addressed it because, in terms of priorities, it was relatively down low on the list. And that aspect came up in my most recent relationship. Now, this most recent relationship, this was the guy who we broke up a month ago, was in no way abusive, and, a wonderful man, very beautiful person, very energetically in alignment with me in a lot of ways. And yet there was this one very minor component from my abusive relationship that threw us into a lot of shadow work on my part, which triggered some of his shadow stuff. So we very quickly in our relationship got to delve into both of our deepest shadows and do some work around that too. So even in the container of supportive, very communicative, very loving, powerful, healthy shamanic relationship, I still got the opportunity to go back and work on a shadow piece from this other very toxic, very abusive shamanic relationship and bring some healing to that. So that is another way in which these patterns can resurface, often, especially in our romantic relationships.
Absolutely, Michelle. Very well said.
Mm-hmm.
I will, I will say that the amount of growth that I have had in my relationships, is so profound. I actually something very this is I'll just say it. In what was it ceremony of a couple weeks ago, one of the things that I was told, that I was given, was around how I'm very sexual. I'm very I love sex, and I love love. I love relationships. And so there was this information that came through around how I was, because that's who I am. Like I've always been that way since I was very young, that in a lot of ways my guides have been pushing me. It was like being led around by the yoni, like we're pushing you through these relationships to give you these lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I was like, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Just I'm like, okay, keep it coming.
Right. Yeah. Good sex and learning and personal growth.
Yay.
Right. Yeah. So this is one of the ways in which relationship has been a huge motivating factor for you in your work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just taught me so much. So Michelle, can we talk about maybe some tools of, how do we navigate these relationships? How do we deal with this stuff?
I think the first and most important component of working with the shamanic relationships in your life is knowing that they're there, first of all. Bringing awareness to these different partnerships, romantic partnerships, family, friends, business relationships, etc., and looking at all of these characteristics that we've listed about, being in alignment with the frequency, bringing up the shadow work, prompting growth for each other, feeling that energetic pull. All of these characteristics of shamanic relationship, please go ahead and apply to your relationships. Look at your relationships with your family and notice what are some of the ways in which we're showing up for each other in a powerful shamanic way. With that awareness, then you'll be able to delve into a little bit more of the ways to work with them, because relationships can be tools. And it's important, if you want to work with these energies, you have to know they're there, first of all, and then use their powers for good, so to speak, rather than in a unhealthy relationship especially, it's very easy to just become awash in, oh, this relationship really drains me, it's very toxic, or it's so bad for me, or whatever, rather than looking at how is this person specifically showing up to help me catalyze myself forward in my own growth on my own path. And that is where we work with the true magic of shamanic relationship as a tool for our growth and evolution.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, that's the thing. Like, we have to reframe the things. We have to reframe, especially the triggers, right? We're like, oh, this person triggers me. This person's an asshole. This person is, just doing this thing that bugs me so badly. And we can start to reframe that and start to look at it in a deeper way of, okay, this person's triggering me, and it's not just that, you know, they're an ass or they're broken or they have a problem, but what is that in, like, where's my potential for growth within that? And, you know, even in, you know, I think that we're all in a shamanic relationship with Donald Trump right now. Like,
I was thinking about that this morning, actually. Yeah, he's a dark teacher. Thank you. Yeah.
We are all in a shamanic relationship with this man, because every word that comes out of his mouth is so triggering and so unbelievable, and we can just say he's an asshole and he's fucked up and he's a narcissist and he's got a big problem and he's this and he's that, and in some ways that's all true. And where can we look for our own growth and development within that? Like witnessing that, where do we grow? Where do we grow in compassion and kindness and self-love and care for the earth and care for people and placement of resource and all of the things that it is calling us into, of what we want to see on this planet for our country and our world. The same is going to happen in every relationship. And I know that in the past I've had relationships, you know, maybe with a coworker who just didn't like me, and there was a lot of tension, and you know, looking back at it now, I can start to maybe unwind the places where the growth for me, either I'm now able to take it on, I couldn't see it at the time, and you know, I definitely probably would have handled things a little bit differently, and that were these perfect triggers for triggering aspects of myself that really needed to be looked at, needed to be loved, and needed to be healed within me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that came to mind as you were sharing that story, thank you, is the aspect of ending shamanic relationship. Oof. Where, or breakups, you know, even if it's like a friend breakup or a coworker breakup, you know, where you eventually stopped working with that person, right? And you know, it's easy for me to look at in the light of my abusive relationship, where as soon as I figured out and had that moment of, oh, that this is not okay for me, and did the work, then I was able to cleanly break up with that person. And how many of us get stuck in these unhealthy pattern relationships, these unhealthy shamanic relationships? Like, a lot of people are stuck in these unhealthy dynamics of shadow work. And it's, you know, we can practice avoidance, or we can just throw the person out of our lives and then have that same medicine show up in another person. And so I think you're mentioning Donald Trump as someone whom we're all in shamanic relationship with right now. One of the reasons why is because people generally, we don't like to do the shadow work. And so we push away the people who are making us look at our shadow, push them away, push them away, push them away. And then a new person comes in and we push them away. And then a new person comes in and we push them away, rather than actually sitting and doing the work. And we've done that so much on the societal level at this point that now we have a person we cannot possibly ignore, who is showing up to be in shamanic relationship with us to make us look at our shadow. And so, you know, viewers, please keep that in mind about when you do the work, when you actually process that energy, then that person, that relationship might no longer be necessary in your life, and it might naturally fade out and leave. So going back to one of my core shamanic relationships that's very challenging for me is with my father. I will probably be working on all of those lessons forever, quite honestly. And, you know, it's maybe he'll shift, maybe he won't, maybe I'll shift, maybe I won't. But every moment I am choosing to practice being in that clear relationship, so that those patterns that I have with him don't show up in other areas of my life. That's another really important tool that I would like to offer to you, is do the shadow work so that you don't have a whole slew of people coming into your life to make you look at it. Do it the first time.
Absolutely. Because that will definitely happen. And I would say that when you are really ready to be complete with that person, when you're really ready to be complete with that relationship, to really look at it as an energetic, that it has this energetic force, and do that cord cutting on a regular basis. And a lot of times we go, oh, I went to a person and they did cord cutting on me. It really is something you have to do quite a few times over and over again of, I release, from my higher self, I release all negative cords and attachments from this person, say their name, back to their higher self. And with love and compassion, that they may receive all that they need and be free, and that I may be free as well. And to just, have that as a practice when we're really trying to complete something that's maybe been there for a while.
Yeah, that's really important, the energetic maintenance aspect of it, especially in, I was going to say especially in partnership, romantic partnership, but I mean really in all relationships. Doing your cord cutting, separating your energies, keep it separate and safe, super important.
Yeah.
So what about our past relationships? One little note I'd like to invite you to look at is, we've talked about, sort of the current relationships in your life. Have a look, go back and have a look at some really important relationships from your past and look for these same characteristics to see if there's anything else that might come to light that maybe will inform some of your current circumstances. There's this saying, and I don't remember exactly word for word, but if you want to know the past, look at the present. If you want to know the future, look at the present. So, but also it applies to, well, if you want to know why your present circumstances are the way they are, look at the past, because you set up patterns, you set up relationship dynamics, which are currently manifesting in your patterns right now in this moment.
Good, Michelle. So we don't have a lot of time left, but let's just talk really briefly about calling in shamanic relationship. And maybe that's partnership. Maybe you're looking for a love partnership that is going to meet you on a certain level, maybe be someone that you can do work with in the world that's on the same mission and path. So
maybe
Michelle,
both.
what do you think is important in calling in a shamanic relationship?
The number one thing is being really clear on your own frequency. Because if you're calling in a shamanic partner, you want it to be a shamanic partner who is in alignment and going to be supportive of your energy, where you're at. So I will also say, the deeper and more grounded you are in, and this goes for all shamanic relationships, the deeper and more grounded you are in your own energy and your own self, the more deeply you will be able to dive into the medicine of shamanic relationship. When we're not grounded in ourselves, it's much easier for us to become awash in somebody else's energy. So that's my number one piece of advice on calling in your shamanic partner, whether it's a romantic partner, business partner, whatever. Be really clear about who you are, know your own frequency, know your own energy, and be very grounded in your medicine, so that the person or the people who you call in for shamanic relationship will be in support of that frequency and that energy.
And your mission, like, know your mission, know why you're here on the planet, figure this out. And it's usually more simple than you think. It's a very simple thing. And, write that down, stick it on your wall, and commit to that every single day. And the more that you commit to that every single day, and you ask for your guides to help, ask for guides to bring in people. I know this is something that I do and have done. I know that earlier in this year, I was really calling in. I kind of moved to San Diego. I was feeling a little alone. I mean, I had my clients and stuff, but you were in Portland. And I was calling a lot. I am looking for my teachers, mentors, guides on the physical plane to come into my life as people that I can create my mission. This is my mission. If you want to help me, guides, with this mission, bring the people in that are going to help support this mission. And I have seen a ridiculous blessing of amazing shamanic mentorship relationships that have entered into my life in the last several months that I'm just blown away and so honored to hold and to be in service to the mission, and having people that are coming into my life, they have the same mission, which is so weird, because I'm like, well, my mission's, not everybody has this mission, that's for sure. And
right.
here are these people that have this very, very, very similar mission.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Great job. And I love how you put that too, where you wrote your mission, you stuck it on the wall and really affirmed every day, calling in the people to support you who are in alignment with that. And we can do this in all of the ways. We can call in our tribe. We can call in our partners by being really clear on the mission, on our frequency. The other important component, I would say, is being open to the growth. You have to say yes to the growth, because if you're on the fence about it, or if you're like, maybe kind of, I don't know, it depends on the growth, or I don't want to go there, you're not necessarily going to be receiving the people who are going to push you. The people who can truly help you alchemize your own personal awareness are the ones who are going to push your buttons in a certain way. There is little growth in comfort. And so often there is some degree of discomfort in our shamanic relationships. And the way that we move through that is by being grounded in ourselves, by creating a safe container for it to take place, because really deep shadow work can take place in a safe container. And the more grounded you are in that medicine, and the more open you are to the growth, you say, yes, please, more. I want teachers to help me look at this aspect of myself. I'm calling in my romantic partner to be in balance with me, to be in alchemy with me, so that we can complement each other. I don't want someone exactly the same as me. I want someone who's going to help catalyze me forward. I want a romantic partner who I can create with. Calling those in, you have to be open to the growth that's going to come with it.
Amen. Wow. Thanks, Michelle. I love this topic. This is so good.
Yeah.
And wow, this is so good. And I'm just so, I'll just add one tiny little bit in there from what my experience is at this moment, is just the overwhelming gratitude. Like, the more gratitude that we can have for our shamanic relationships, the more devotion to the service of the shamanic relationships that we have, the more that we're going to be allowed to have them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I have a deep gratitude practice, daily gratitude practice, speaking the words out, and stating the names of the people that I am in these shamanic relationships with, sending them love and light, and just being in gratitude for them, even when they're difficult, and even when they're triggering, and even when they're, whatever's happening, they're falling apart in some kind of way. Like, just continuously pouring gratitude for the experience.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And for those of you who would like some help in cultivating these shamanic relationships in your lives, please do feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us through our email address, shamansistersessions@gmail.com. You can find our Facebook page, just search for Shaman Sister Sessions. And we are happy to help guide you through some of these steps in calling in your shamanic relationships, working with the shamanic relationships already in your life to be able to access these energies more fully and work with the growth and medicine to take place. So if you would like to do that, please contact us, and we Powerful Shaman Sister Sessions in Shamanic Relationship would love to help support you in that way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michelle. And we will see you all next Tuesday at noon. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.